Hi everyone, and welcome to another monthly economic update episode for the month of May 2025, brought to you by the Economic Intelligence Unit through our platform Economy.lk. So for this particular month, I thought of giving all of you an update on the fiscal front, especially on the debt situation, because the Ministry of Finance has updated the debt situation as at end March 2025. Then I'll quickly move on to the fiscal front in terms of revenue and expenditure and the primary balance. And moving away from the fiscal front, I'll talk a little bit about the external front in terms of the first quarter exports and imports, and then talk a little bit on tourism and remittances. So that's a little bit of the structure for the monthly economic update today. If we have a look at this particular slide, this gives an overall understanding on the public debt situation as at end May 2025. So if you look at the particular numbers here, government debt stands at $102 billion, state-owned enterprise debt stands at about $4.8 billion, provincial council and local government debt stands at around $17 million as at end March 31st, 2025. And if you break it down a little bit in terms of public debt, so you have domestic debt that has gone up from December 2024 to March 2025 from 64.5 billion to 65.4 billion. External debt also has gone up slightly from 36.6 billion to 37.2 billion. And the total public debt has obviously gone up from 106 to 107.5 billion. And if you look at this particular slide, this is a breakdown on the domestic debt. So if you look at the domestic debt, mainly you have treasury bonds and treasury bills. So treasury bonds consist of about over 40 billion. So if you look at this particular slide over here, $49.2 billion is for treasury bonds, $13.8 billion is for treasury bills, and then you have other types of sources for domestic debt. And that's domestic debt. What does external debt look like? And that is what you see here on this particular slide. So on the external debt front, you have multilateral debt, bilateral debt, and market borrowings. Multilateral debt consists of 36%, bilateral 29%, and commercial at 35%. And if you break it down a little bit further, multilateral debt, majority portion ADB, that's about 18%. On the commercial debt side, it's mainly the ISBs at 28%, and bilateral debt, it's mainly from NPCs, that's the non-Paris Club members. And I have further broken it down for external debt because we had the external debt restructuring about 2-3 years ago. And on the external front, who are we paying in terms of multilateral, bilateral, and the ISBs? So that is what you see here in this particular slide. So this is a detailed external debt breakdown. So if you look here, multilateral, the first particular row, ADB, we owe them about $6.7 billion. World Bank, we owe them about $4.6 billion. In terms of bilateral, we owe China the most, about $4.9 billion. Second being Japan, about $2.4 billion. And then on the commercial front, it's mainly the ISBs, which we owe about $10.5 billion. And next, after the restructuring, it's important to look at how the maturity structure is for ISBs, particularly that $10.5 billion before and after restructuring. And that is what you see here in this particular slide over here. So in red or maroon, you see the new maturity, and in this green color, you have the previous maturity. So if you see here, 2025, we were supposed to pay $2.15 billion. That's what you see on the green chart. But after the restructuring, we are only supposed to pay about $330 million. And from 2028, 2029 onwards, that particular payment goes up. And by 2036, that payment amount goes beyond $1 billion. Now, that's on the debt front. Now, let's have a look at on the revenue and expenditure front and the fiscal balance and the primary balance. So that's what you see here on this particular chart. So if you look at the revenue side, tax revenue has gone up for the first quarter from Jan to March from 837 billion to 986 billion. Quarter on quarter, there's an increment. And the rate of increase of the tax revenue is higher than the expenditure increase. That's what you see here, where the expenditure increase has gone up from 1.198 billion to 1.3 billion. And the primary balance, because of this, has also improved. That's what you see on the right-hand side, has gone up from 316 billion rupees to 397 billion. Even the overall budget balance deficit has also improved. Now, that's on the fiscal front. what has happened on the external front. And that's what we're going to talk about in terms of exports and imports, especially first on export front, merchandise and services. How has it performed for the first quarter from Jan to April? Comparison between 2023, 2024 and 2025. So if you look here, 2025, there's an improvement of 7.8% if you consider merchandise and services, totaling to $5.5 billion in 2025 Jan to April compared to $5.1 billion in 2024 Jan to April. And if you look at the next slide, where I have broken down the imports and the exports according to its category, you see for import category, you have consumer goods imports, intermediate goods imports, and investment goods imports. All three have gone up. And for export categories, you have agricultural and industrial exports. Both those have also gone up. For example, agricultural goods have gone up from $828 million to $928 million. And the industrial exports have gone up from 3.2 to $3.3 billion. And the next particular slide, I'm focusing on the product-wise exports, because earlier I looked at the sector-wise exports. Now we are looking at industry-wise exports. So if you look at this particular slide, you have apparel and textile, which has gone up by 11.59%. Tea has gone up, tea exports by 6.23%. Likewise, but of course, if you look at the diamonds, gem and jewelry, it has contracted by 15%. If you look at petroleum products, also has contracted by about 7.48%. And this is a product-wise merchandise exports from Jan to April, a comparison between 2024 and 2025. Next up, we have the service exports. That's what you see here on this particular slide. So service exports, if you look at Jan to April on your right-hand side, ICT BPM services have improved by 4.91%, whereas construction services has contracted significantly by 47%. But transport and logistics have also improved quite significantly by almost close to 21%. And then in terms of the merchandise export destination, now this is a very interesting indicator. Especially, it's interesting to see how May, the data is for May, but of course we have only from Jan to April. So if you look here on this particular slide, for the United States, it has improved by 7.94% in terms of merchandise exports. India has improved almost 40%. Of course, to other countries like Canada, France, there's a slight contraction. China, we have improved by 6.8%. So this is a breakdown in terms of the destination of our merchandise exports. Then we come to worker remittances for up to Jan to April. So we have 2024 and 2025 a comparison. So if you look at this particular slide, Jan 2024 to April 2024 worker remittances has been at around $2.079 billion. But fast forward to 2025 Jan to April, it has improved to 2.46 billion, which is an 18.3% improvement. And if you look at the tourism earnings also has improved by about 10.2% if you consider from Jan to April. So if you look at this particular slide, you have tourists coming in from Jan to April 2024 of about 784,000, but 2025 you have about 896,000 folks coming in. And the month of May, if you look at to the right hand side, I had about 132,000, which is a slight improvement compared to 2018 and quite a significant improvement compared to 2024. Why am I comparing this to 2018? Because still 2018 is the benchmark year that we look at. And finally, I want to give an update on where our foreign reserves stand. So foreign reserves as at end April 2025 is at around $6.3 billion. And this particular slide shows a breakdown of how that $6.3 billion is comprised of. And if you look at this particular slide, so in terms of securities, you have 2.1 billion, currency and deposits 4.1 billion, IMF position 4 million. So likewise, you have $4 million, SDRs 30 million. So you have a small breakdown, gold at around 50 million. These at end April 2025. So I hope you found this particular video insightful. Stay tuned in for our next monthly economic update for the month of June. And thank you very much for tuning in.